Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shut It Away Book Club, a weekly container that has been holding space for discussions, musings, and reflections on the text called Angels Unveiled by Sheikh Hisham Kabbani. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you are listening to this episode on the Room Radio podcast, which is where you will be able to find it, I want to say thank you for tuning in. And please take this time to like the podcast episode, subscribe to the Broom Radio podcast wherever you are streaming it. And if you really like what we're doing here on the podcast, please feel free to support the Broom Radio podcast by clicking the link below. That will direct you to our Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can decide to either become a member of the Discord space, get early access to episodes, and really just receive emails on all things that are happening in the Discord that pertain to the Broom Radio. This book club takes place within the Shut It Away lineage space, which is a lineage space that I am stewarding and keeping with the help of many other people's input in the Broom. And you can also support the Shut It Away by clicking the link that will direct you to the Shut It Away Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can decide, hey, I want to become a member of the space so I can join and get all the exclusives related to this space, like the read alouds for this book club, which for me is like pretty profound not because I'm like a profound reader or anything, but I'm like, I ain't never been part of a book club where people read to me. I'm just saying. Actually, no, that's not true. But like read to me in advance, that's like literally only the luxury I used to provide for my students. And for my teaching job, where I was working with students who were on the spectrum, and as part of their accommodations that was like given to them by the state, that they needed read alouds as part of the curriculum and to engage with texts in a particular way. I myself am a huge fan of audiobooks. I'm also a huge fan of being read to, so I promise I'm not just like gassing myself. I also like would love to hear from folks who are part of the Shut It Away, if the read alouds are working, if we should, I don't know, maybe go back to live read alouds. I'm open. So feel free to let me know. But yeah, again, just thank you all for tuning in. I took a little bit of a break as I was traveling. And is there anything else I want to say on that? I'm in Istanbul right now, and will be for the remainder of this month into the next month. And then we'll be traveling elsewhere after. And so I'm saying that because if you've been following along with this book club live, I will be making changes to the time of this, gathering. And if you join the Shut It Away membership space, or if you follow the Broom Radio on social media, which is at the Broom Radio on most outlets and most parasocial media outlets, I will definitely be sure to maintain updates in a way that both honors my schedule and honors the timing of this book club. So thank you all again. I just want to say I appreciate your patience. And also, I just want to say a special thank you to those who are here live. Thank you, Tiff. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lexi, for being here. And today we are going to be discussing the contents of chapters 14, 15, and 16 in Angels Unveiled. And I would just like to kind of kick us off. And oh, Adam says, Tiff says, I like both as far as reading. And then Adam says, I love the recordings. Thanks, you guys. That's really affirming, actually. Um, and so before I hit record, we kind of started off with a pre-discussion on the contents of chapters 14, 15, and 16, with also a mention and a reread of chapter 13 of this particular text. And for those listening asynchronously, um, actually, no, I'll wait. For those of y'all who are here live, I'm curious if from the pre-discussion that we had, if there is kind of anything that you're reflecting on. I guess we can start with chapter 14 just to kind of go in chronological order. Yeah, starting with chapter 14, which is titled A Journey to the Land of Angels. And as a brief synopsis, this chapter is essentially about a saint who basically has a direct spiritual experience with angels and also the prophet, peace be upon him. And before we get into the contents and like the weeds of this chapter, I guess I just want to kind of hold space and ask you all who are here live, like, how did reading chapter 14, listening to chapter 14 flow for y'all? And yeah, I'd love to start there. And you can feel free to unmute, or if you type in the chat, I'd happily read what you all shared. We already have some reflections that we kind of, yeah, again, started off in the pre-container. I shared a little bit about chapter 14. So yeah, I just would love to hear from you all, as long as it feels aligned. No worries, Anna. Also, if there are any particular paragraphs that y'all would like to revisit in chapter 14, I'd happily reread them as well. Oh yeah, Tiff. Come on the mic. Come on down.
Hello. On chapter 14, one thing that stuck out for me was how there was the story about one of the saints who he got hit by a bullet and then had like an experience where he saw the prophet. And I thought it was cool that like when he came back and he told his uncle only like part of the story, but his uncle knew. So it was like this is some sort of like corroborated story. Like he's got another witness who experienced who recognized it. So it's not just like, like a lot of your spiritual experiences be like just you by yourself, but like it's definitely nice that like it makes it more real when you got somebody to reflect it back.
That part, absolutely, Tiff. Dang. The witness. Oh my God. I got chills as you were speaking. I absolutely agree. I think, at least in my personal experience, a lot of my spiritual experiences have been solo dolo. And it was hard not to notice that. Like, because wasn't it his uncle who, like, cheekily at the end of the saint kind of like returning back to his body from this experience was like, how your journey? And like the saint didn't know whether or not like he meant like a physical journey or like the journey to like a liminal realm. But in that moment, it was kind of clear that that's what his uncle meant. Like I know you was in the realms. I know you was in the realms, playboy. And so, yes, ashe to that, ashe to that, like witness, ashe to that. Um, yeah, like this text kind of breaking the mold on, yeah, like what it's like to have a witness. And I kind of want to center in that in a little bit and ask y'all, like, if you put yourself in the shoes of the saint and kind of like try to feel into like that kind of experience, how would you respond? Mm.
Phew. Nowadays, this is Adam. I feel like I would be afraid I'd be thinking about it too much, like trying to make
Mm.
sense of it. You know what I mean? Like, and just trying to recall it. And I think, yeah, that I think it's so beautiful that he had his uncle to like have someone to reflect and like say it out loud and help him with that integration of like what did he take away from this.
Mm.
Um, and like, yeah, I'd really be like curious, like what to do with it in terms of it's such a special transmission. And obviously, the saint shared it so that it became, ended up becoming part of the collection that's in this book, right? And so clearly, this story has some really interesting insights for people. And I don't know, like that would be the hardest part for me. Like, is just like really sitting with, okay, what am I supposed to do to share this to let people know? And I'll just
Mm.
putting myself in this place. I don't know why. For some reason, there was something really touching to me about the one part where he's like describing he's being shown like different kinds of deaths, like blissful and happy, or like painful deaths, and different states, including some people that were receiving some torment. And
Mm.
I thought it was so touching when the saints like, did they have to be tormented? Can anything be done? And
Mm.
the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is like, actually it can. Like, I just wanted you to be able to witness what happens if I don't intercede.
Mm.
And I thought
Mm.
that was like really big to me too, where it's like, yeah, there's like that pain message of like hell and torment, but I feel like that's already alive. It feels like
Mm.
this story in this text and a lot of other parts in some of the Sufi stuff I've been reading, thanks to Shorty Oe, is like there's this hopeful universalism is what they call it in Christianity, but like this really hopeful like conversation in some of these passages of like, listen, redemption really can come to anybody.
Mm.
Um, Anyone can be saved if they can just like if there's like an intercession like this with the prophet, and really if they repent, right? If they actually apologize, if they so like I just thought it was another sign yet again of like this message of like, yes, that happens, but I'm actually just showing you this so you know what
Mm.
would happen if there wasn't more intercession, if there wasn't this mercy that's built
Mm.
into.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam, I'm really happy that you brought that in. Because there's like, yeah, there's like two parts of this story, I guess, is like the one thing that Tiff brought up feels really important too, like the witness. And then I think this other aspect that you're bringing in feels equally important of intercession and like, yeah, forgiveness, redemption. Um, gosh, there's so much in that that's coming up for me. I guess what I'll say is, yeah, I agree with so much of what you said. And I think that there is, was it called hopeful universalism? Is that kind of what you were speaking to,
Oh,
Adam?
universalism. I said hopeful. It feels hopeful to me, but like, yeah, in Christianity, like, there's a term that I heard a lot of, like universalism, which is a
Mhm.
pretty I would say it's more. It's definitely more the exception than the norm in terms of
Mm.
like theology in Christian denominations. But there are branches and sects that believe that ultimately everyone can be saved and will be saved.
Mhm. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, thank you for bringing that in because there it just it feels key. It's my first time hearing of that kind of like phrase, especially in the context of like uh Abrahamic traditions. So I'm really looking forward to looking more into that. And I agree that there's this tone, especially in this part of the text, that I would say like, yeah, the prophet kind of shows this saint like a different timeline, I guess you can say, of like what would happen if, yeah, if like redemption wasn't a thing. And if there weren't intercessory figures, again, if there weren't witnesses to one's spiritual moments or moments where they're experiencing spiritual expansion, I think for me, it further solidifies like the importance of I don't want to quite say like spiritual community, but almost just the reality of spiritual communion, I think becomes very apparent, at least for me in this text. Um, I think also what comes up in that apparentness is that the witness and the intercessor is not always necessarily going to look how you expect it to. Um, and even the moments that bring individuals to a state of what I guess what I want to call at this moment like spiritual rapture are, yeah, are not pleasant by the sense of the self that, yeah, seeks that pleasantries, right? I mean, I think underneath this chapter, it's really interesting that the saint who seems to have been a very reverent person, I'm imagining he is because to be a saint, I'm sure you have to be like really devoted. Um, yeah, kind of got shot shielding in order for him to like experience this, what in my culture we call mu'jiza or like miracle. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that we're kind of going here. Um, yeah, I'm like kind of feeling into if it's relevant to read the part of the text, but I feel like Adam, you gave a pretty solid synopsis. So, um, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Adam. I also really appreciate how you spoke to like not knowing how to share or like, yeah, the potential of like having such an experience, putting yourself in the shoes of the saints and not quite knowing what to share. It's funny though, because it seems like the person that he wanted to share it with, his uncle, kind of already knew, which I'm really looking forward to.
Mhm.
Yeah, you feel me?
But we also are the ones who got shared, right? Because we're here talking about the story now, right? And I
That's
think
really
that I also wanted. Sorry, I didn't. I wanted to just add one more piece while we were still on this story. I also found it so fascinating, and if you have the text, maybe there's the line to like make sure I'm not getting it wrong. But like when when Muhammad shows up,
cool.
like he says, like you were fated to die in this moment,
Mm,
but there's still more. There's still something for you to do actually in your physical body. Like I
mm,
thought that was so interesting that like your death this was always going to happen, but actually there's something happening. It was hard to tell from the text if it was like it was always going to happen that he was going to come back because he had more work to do, or if there was like this fluidity. But I feel like with the Sufi perspective in this book altogether, it has a very different picture of like this kind of give and take. Things are
mm,
shifting. I think we've had some cool conversations in these book clubs about how it feels like God is also learning things. If that's even a thing to say, like not learning, but like there's like
absolutely.
there's direct information, right, being channeled back, and how it's affecting the larger picture and what God is doing. And so like that part was really interesting to me, where it was this like fated death, but there was this clear message of like actually, and I like how they separated too. Like I think the text says something like, but there's still more work for you to do, both physically and spiritually.
Yes.
So it's like you're not ready to like lose this physicality yet. There's still some stuff you got to do, and conceivably one of them would be like telling the story to others, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super interesting because I feel like I can feel exactly what you're saying, Adam. First of all, thank you for bringing in the specificity of the text, and you're right. It actually speaks to the fact that he was destined to die, but also that he still needed spiritual and physical form, as the text reads. And it's super interesting because I feel like there's a part of me that's like, Islam is so, as I know it, at least from my perspective and lived experience, it's been a faith and a lineage that's been like so anti like preaching basically, but it also has a very strong thread of what I call like da'wah, which is, I mean, I'm calling it da'wah. No, it's actually what it's called. It's called da'wah in the spiritual tradition. And it's basically like, yeah, like spreading the good news, spreading the what in my particular lineage, what we call warfian. So like the good news, right? Of faith and like redemption, and how yeah, there's a reality of like folks who come back into Islam being known as reverts, which is very cont- contested and also very celebrated. And so I don't want to get into like the politicalness of that, but I do feel what you're saying. Like, yeah, we're here in current time witnessing the story. So there was something to be shared, something to be transmitted. And then there's also something about really interesting from a textual perspective to me, just to kind of reflect back what you're saying, how it's the prophet who confronts the saints sort of at this threshold space, right? This sort of threshold where he is being communicated to that it's not quite his time, but it's also it seems very important for him to witness what he is witnessing, right? And so whether it's for him to spread the good word and do the da'wah, or if it's for him to like double down on his saintly life, or if it's, you know, for him to yeah, sort of open that reality portal that sort of reflects what we've been kind of talking about in this text, right? Like that there's, once you kind of have a spiritual experience, at least from my perspective, it not only changes your field, it not only changes the way that you interact with the divine as an individual, but it can ripple, right? Now, what direction it ripples in, I don't know, because everyone's uh, ancestry is so different. And so, yeah, some people might be called to like have a more spiritual tutelage. Some people might be more called to be like devoted in a different way. Um, you know, I personally, as somebody who's had a couple near death experiences, I will say that those experiences have changed the way that I approach like the highway of information that I'm connected to, right? Regarding the angelic realms, the spiritual realms, the earthly, like the deep earth realms. And my idea of like creation kind of has been changed based on those events. And I wonder if y'all can sense, or if there's a part in this chapter that speaks that to you all, like that the saint is like kind of forever changed by his direct experience. And but also, yes, there's a part of that direct experience where the prophet directly communicates to him, peace be upon him, peace be upon both of these guys, you know, you feel me? Where he kind of like directly says that like you're fated to also have this experience too, right? Like you're just as much as you're fated to like um understand this, like it that to me is a very profound moment to hear from the prophet who intercedes on people's behalves, to say that directly to the saint. And I'm curious if that brings up anything for you all. I'm just reading the chat. Ah, okay, I gotta read what Tiff said. I'm sorry. Um, oh, there's so much coming up. Tiff says I would be galvanized by that experience. Yes, dude. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. I could have honestly just looked down and read what you said and just ended my transmission there, because I feel like that's very clear in this text that like something in him shifts, something in him is sparked. Again, enlightenment sometimes for a lot of people is like this cacophonous experience, but it seems like what this text is saying is that no, it can be very nuanced. It can be the reality of you looking down at your swollen body at the threshold of death and being like, okay, I guess I'm gonna come back, you know? So yeah, thank you for saying that. Tiff says, I might even feel inspired to preach to the people. Like, I've seen the glory. Ashe. I'm going to read what Lexi said. Also, how the prophet told him that he had to go back because it was his duty. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to just read this paragraph, y'all, because it's really profound. And I think it's going to emphasize what we're all kind of saying. And so it's on page 119, and it says, quote, as I lay dying, I saw the prophet coming to me. He said, quote, oh, my son, you were destined to die here, but we still need you on this earth in both your spiritual and physical form. I come to you to show you how a person dies and how the angel of death takes the soul. He, the prophet, presented me with a vision in which I saw my soul leaving my body cell by cell, beginning from the toes. As life was withdrawing, I could see how many cells are in my body, the function of every cell, the cure for every sickness of each cell, and I heard every cell in its remembrance of God. Chills. Yeah, the cells. It's so awesome. So Tiff says in the chat, LOL, current Dawa is a bit weird sometimes, so I understand the hesitation. Absolutely. Yes, Tiff, thank you so much for saying that. I feel really seen by this because yeah, I sometimes have heard from some like spiritual schools that like the best da'wah is good character. And so sometimes there's not a lot to say. And I know that that's like probably in like direct conflict. Hang on a second, y'all. My hotspot's making a noise. Leaving your hotspot off too long. Babes, I'm muting it. What do you mean? Anyways. Yes, with that one. I do think that yeah, there's a way where it's like really strange and weird and like deeply political. And I also feel at the same time that like good character is honestly like the most attractive thing to anyone. So yeah, absolutely, dude. Yes. Tiff says that's my da'wah. Good character because I can't talk about it knowledgeably, but I can share changes in my life. Ashe. Yeah, yeah. And I think that I think for me, like my personal Islam is like necessarily like scriptural and textual, but it's like when people look at me and like they see parts of me that they feel like, oh, I can relate to that. I feel like that actually, especially we're talking about like ripples, right? I think that that creates like a more profound ripple in people when they're seeing somebody live the seeing somebody live out the tenets of their own faith, right? As opposed to being like, this is what makes a good Muslim. It's like, okay, so like, can you show me how? Like, you know, I'm a tactile learner. Can you show me what that means? You know? And so, and I feel like this is where Islam also like parts from some of the style, I should say, not necessarily like the message, the style of like Christianity is it's so funny because I'm just even thinking about my experience with like some of my friends, really good friends who grew up like Christian, where it's like, yeah, the way that we sort of even just to each other context, our conversations always different. I think because even just for me on a personal level, I was like, I want my da'wah to be embodied. I want my message. I want the good word that rests in me to be in my body and something that like reflects out of me in my day-to-day life. And so I know this is super abstract, but I'm going to pivot because I feel like this has a lot to do with the mention of the cells in this chapter. Because like I just think it's super interesting that this is also like what this notices. Like something so microscopic down to like the cellular and I don't mean microscopic like small, but I'm like cellular structures are very tiny. And the reality of, this sort of like the idea that this even his cells are like in remembrance of God. I wonder, I'm just gonna ask y'all, like, I wonder what that evokes for you guys in that moment in the text.
Hello, this is Tiff. For me, I think about that all the time. Like on, I think somewhere in the Quran, it talks about how like in the afterlife, your body will speak for you. Like and like,
Mm.
or it's like the hypocrites will be like, "Yeah, I did a great job," and then their hands will be like, "Nah, you didn't give. You like held on to too much money." Or like your feet will be like, you walked to a bad place and you shouldn't have gone there. Like, and so I'm like thinking about that a lot of the time when I'm doing various acts of devotion or whatever. I'm like, my whole body, whether I'm doing it or not, is probably always like still on its in its natural state, trying to like just worship in any state. Like, so like if I'm doing something, like that I know I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm thinking like, I can feel in my body when it's like trying to like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe because like you're like interrupting our devotion time or whatever. So I
Oh,
was like, okay, I think about that all the time. So like to see it reflected in this text again, I was like, yeah, that probably makes sense. That sounds about right.
dude, Tiff, I got chills right now,
Yeah.
bro. Yeah, yeah. Especially if we're talking about like witnesses in the context of this text, it's like, yeah, the body is a witness too. Like, there's not to be creepy, but I'm like, your cells are watching, you know, you know. And thank you, bro. That's huge. And I want to say more on that, and just how it's for you in your practice.
Yeah. I think for sure, like it just feels like I get more tuned in to my body because I approached like before I came to Islam, I was like I studied all this other metaphysical stuff, so I still try to take that embodied approach of like I know I'm doing this from like my mental willpower sense, but then like trying to pay attention to on the subconscious level what's happening. It's like for science, like what happens if I do this routine regularly, what changes, what like how do I react to things differently. And so definitely or like that time we read about energetic boundaries, and they were talking about how
Mm,
every cell has its own set of boundaries from like from the other cells, from like you have that cellular level response to things that you have a hard boundary against sometimes,
mm.
and stuff like that. So I'm like always, what what is what does Islam look like on a cellular level for me? Like that's just something I'm always paying attention to.
What does it look like on a cellular level for me? Could someone quote these? Like, yeah, yeah. That's Tiff. I really appreciate so physical, like just strictly metaphysical, right? Work that we've taught, like with energetic boundaries, the text. Oh God, hold on. I have chills right now, girl. I have chills right now. Gosh, thank you much. Thank you much for that. What's it look like on a cellular level? Mm. I will be sitting with that for a very long time. Um, and I think that question is so profound because I think what you said about the body kind of like am reflecting on that. Like, it seems like what you're saying is like the body is in this devotional state already. and that we, like, as conscious, like, receivers, observers, are, like, tuned into that or not with respect to what's going on. And I also really love that you said that, like, there's a part of the cellular make that's like, you can't do certain things because it disturbs the devotion or the state of devotion we're already in, again, from cellular level. And I just really love that because I think it's like, yeah, it speaks to not only like the microcosm that we were speaking to, um, but again, also like the reality of the cells and how, like, yeah, the reality of like the body's communication system and how the possibility that the body may be connected to these highways of information of direct transmission. And I just really, like, I'm going to be sitting with that in my heart. And as I sit with it, I'm curious if it brings up anything else for you all, like Adam and Lexi. Um, Zoe, thanks again for that offer.
I mean, for sure. Like, I'm so glad it came back into the container because, like, I just thought it was so remarkably timely and relevant to a lot of the conversations that have happened here. And particularly even in book club, like, too, where we talked about how the angels kind of almost have this, like, feeling like connection of like red blood cells in the body of God, right? Like, and like, so it really felt like this beautiful way of pointing us to how every cell in the body is a part of this. And it's not just like every cell in the body is a part of our physical life, but every cell in the body is a part of our spiritual life. Like this idea of like the soul leaving cell by cell. And as they're leaving, he's gaining information about how they all have these unique functions and roles and remembrances. And like, it's just this gorgeous, like to me, like I always like whenever I'm telling people about well, like if I'm talking about like Dawa, right? Like if I'm talking about like monism or like this idea of like the one, but how the one is plural at the same time. Like I always talk about the cells in the body with people that are like not really open to that kind of language where it's like, well, okay, you're one person, right? But aren't you also like billions of cells and life forms? And so like just having that conversation could help people realize like how a unity can be so diverse and so plural. And I just love that this is like bringing the body into a heightened, even more like granular, like I like how y'all are saying, like Islam, like at the cellular level, like spirit at the cellular level. Um, and how like I just also think it's beautiful how it's like we can think of the soul as like, I think there's different locations people talk about the seat of consciousness or where's the soul and all these different things. But like the idea of like how it is immanent in every single cell was just really striking to me and really beautiful and felt also like it was bringing us into like maybe thinking about ourselves also as like cells in the body of God or these kinds of things. But maybe that's just me kind of where I'm at these days.
Absolutely, Adam. Y'all are spitting today because I got chills. Like, what? Oh, Adam, so much of what you said really aligns for me. Yeah, especially the bit on this granularity and like observing this connection to the one, right, or the creator. Um, the diversity and plurality of oneness. Gosh, my crown is like tingling right now. And I really appreciate what you said too, like just this larger question that I think rises in consciousness spaces, right? So it's like we're kind of speaking about it, we're speaking about it in one way, but I think that this context is really particular because I think in a lot of like studies and discussion about consciousness, I don't think that they're missing the mark. I think that there is actually so much there. So I appreciate it if that's where you are right now. I'm like, yeah, more of that, soon more of that on my plate because I do think that there's this way to approach the like macro and micro duality in some of these frameworks that you're presenting. And I think that I was expecting the text to kind of go to this level of granularity But it also is so funny because we kind of did set the context beforehand with this idea that, like, yeah, like spiritual artifices are like the red blood cells of God, and then like maybe other spiritual artifices are like the white blood cells, and that we in and of ourselves in the body of the one is not only just compelling but checks out in many different like schools of thought. And so I'm really appreciating what we're putting down here today. And I feel like, yeah, the moment that I feel like I got chills and was just like, whoa, is that moment. I feel like there's part of me that recognizes that we are like engaging with this text in a deeply metaphysical way. And that we're engaging in this text like probably in astral ways, which I won't get into like right now. But I'm really appreciating everything that you guys are sharing. So thank you. Um, Ooh, okay. I gotta read what Tiff said out loud. And oof, yes. Okay, Tiff says my most recent content obsession is interviews from Ahmed Hirachi, an Islamic undertaker, whoa, who used to be a bodybuilder. He talks a lot about the death process and how there are signs on the body of a person's spiritual state. Yeah, I'm curious if you want to say more about that, Tiff, and what you're kind of taking away from how he talks about the death process.
Yeah. So he's like a Muslim undertaker. So I was just like learning about how the Muslims do their burial process and everything, and like it was interesting because like well the first thing I took away from it was like how like respectful of the body the process is, like because they believe, well, we believe, I guess I believe because I'm a Muslim now, but yeah, like the body goes, like the body is still kind of alive somehow in a sense. I don't know exactly how, but but he was like, like, so like you gotta bury it like the day it dies, like because it don't want to just be like out and about sitting there feeling itself rot in the breeze, I guess. So that was pretty interesting, but like he was talking about how like their feet be pointed a certain way because the soul is coming from the toes and up out the body, and sometimes like their heads will be like looking up, and their eyes will be open looking up, because like it says the like you watch your soul leave in a sense. So I was like, wow, this is all real interesting, and it's kind of, I guess it kind of reflects in this in our reading passages as well. But yeah, it was cool because he's like he wasn't sugarcoating it. Like he was living a hard bodybuilder life, and then he was dealing with bodies all the time. And like I thought that was an interesting parallel, that he's building his body, and then now he's like dealing with decomposing bodies. Like that was a wild switch in life. Sometimes life comes at you fast, and then you find yourself doing the whole different thing. But yeah, that just like the about the death process of like your body kind of like there's signs if you look for them, if you want to see them, like that type of thing, like very very obvious. But I don't know, it's just like he wouldn't have no reason to like be weird about it, because it's just he's had seen so many bodies all the time. And so yeah, just like that, I think about death more in a comprehensive way, I guess. Like I still don't know too much about it, but just like very very real implications of what death could be for me. Yeah, that's pretty much what I took away.
Thanks for sharing that, Tiff. Um, I too am very piqued by just I'm like the juxtaposition of being a bodybuilder and then working with decomposing bodies. And then the way that this text talks about the way that the body's oriented when the saint, for example, his soul like leaves his body. And then like also, yes, including the lore of like how much care and thoughtfulness goes into, for example, the burying process. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of traditions. Um, but yeah, that's always fascinated me too. Just the rituals and the rites around death and burying in Islam. It's like truly fascinated me ever since I was a kid, which is like very dark. I understand, but I also feel like it comes from this curiosity around like, yeah, like what is the body communicating? Like what is the form, right? What is this transition between being a spirit in a corporeal form and then like kind of releasing that corporeal responsibility, and what does that sort of do to the soul? And I think that as you were speaking, first feel free to share content about this guy in the Sharia way if you want to. And yeah, if you need help starting a thread, just let me know, because I would love to just speak more about this dichotomy actually. And then I also wanted to read, actually, I wonder if anyone would like to read these 3 paragraphs that are on page 119 that like continue, and the way that the saint continues from where we left off, I should say, the way that the saint describes the way that the body um, responds in his particular experience. And if not, I'll definitely read it. But I do think that there's something really compelling here. And I'll read it. It's no problem. So it says, quote, "As my soul was passing away, I experienced what a person feels when he or she dies. I was brought to see the different states of death, the painful states of death, easy states of death, and the most blissful states of death. The Prophet told me, quote, you are of those who pass in a blissful state of death. I enjoyed that passing so much because I was going back to my origin, which made me comprehend the secret of the Quranic verse. To God we belong, and to God is our return. Quran 2, verses 156. That vision continued until I experienced my soul departing on the last breath. I saw the angel of death come and heard the questions he would ask. I experienced all kinds of visions that appear to the dying, yet I was alive during that experience, and this enabled me to understand the secret of that state," which to me really speaks to what I think you were speaking to as well, Tiff. And I'm going to read this last paragraph. It says, quote, "I saw in that vision my soul looking down on my body. The Prophet told me, quote, 'Come with me.' I accompanied the Prophet, and he took me to a vision of the 7 heavens. I saw everything he wished me to see in the 7 heavens. He raised me to the station of truthfulness, where I met all the prophets, all the saints, all the martyrs, and all the righteous." This is really like a beautiful synthesis from my perspective. I'm also going to read something that Lexi said out loud in reference to book club and sessions overall. Lexi says, "Am realizing these book club sessions have been really helping me to develop honor for my own body, and also in seeing my body as part of God, plus the one that changes with God." Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that too. Part of God and the one that changes with God feels really aligned to me. I feel like we got super granular, and I'm not mad about it. Like we zoomed really, really into the text. So before we move on, I just want to check in with y'all, see how you guys are doing, see if there's anything percolating. I do just want to say thank you all for the the richness of this conversation so far. Put in an emoji. Me too, Tiff. Tiff says, I forgot we had two more chapters. LOL, this got deeper than expected. Yes, I was not expecting us to get this deep, but I'm fine with that too. How are y'all feeling about it?
Yeah.
And more often than not in these book clubs, we end up carrying chapters over into the next week. So I just want to let y'all know I'm fine with it too. Yes, I love the flow as well. Same here. It's working for me. Awesome. So I do want to honor y'all's time and wow, yeah, say that we didn't quite get to chapters 15 and 16 again, which I think is okay. Um, how do you all feel about revisiting, maybe reviewing chapter 14 and discussing chapter 15 and 16 next week? And Tiff says, I would like that. Adam says, it's cool with me. I see Lexi's typing. Lexi says, feels good to me. Awesome. Thanks, y'all, for your input. That really helps. So great. Those of y'all who are listening asynchronously, thank you so much for tuning in to the Shit Away Book Club. Again, if you would like to be part of the live discussion, which as you can see, it gets really vast and I would say, yeah, even grounded, please feel free to click the link at the bottom of this episode to inquire about becoming a member. Memberships are only $5 a month. And so if you are curious, if you've been listening to this and if you've been wanting to get in on the quote unquote proverbial action, feel free to click that link. And if you are curious about how to receive a giveaway membership, which is a free membership to the Shire Away, which I will lightly consider, feel free to DM me at Intrepid Bodies, either here in Discord, on all social media platforms, and we can definitely talk shop. We can absolutely talk. But again, thank y'all so much. A special thank you again to Adam, Tiff, and Lexi for contributing to this conversation. And I will, inshallah, see you all next week. Thank you all again, and peace. Also, see you later, Craig. Thank you so much for recording this episode.